This is Sportscenter.
You know it is, baby. Welcome to the set of Sportscenter. I'm Kevin Connors. Our top story tonight is in Orem, Utah. Utah Valley University men's basketball. I've been telling America about the Wolverines since they got that huge win back in November. You know the one I'm talking about. Anyway, Wolverines, tonight I want 40 minutes of top plays. I want the loudest crowd in the WAC. I want the rowdiest student section in the nation. Maul, I'm looking at you. And last but not least, I want a W tonight, baby. Hey, UVU, lights out.
Wolverines, are you ready? Dig your claws into a podcast that only bleeds green. UVU sports news, stats, and more with exclusive interviews. Made for the fans, by the fans. One Team All Green presents the Green Machine Podcast.
Hey guys, it's another episode of the Green Machine Podcast. As you could see from our introduction, we have a pretty special guest on tonight on the episode. It's Wednesday night. He's been adored by UVU fans since November 2016. Kevin Connors, ESPN anchor. Glad you could join us tonight.
Kyle, it's my pleasure to be on with you guys.
So I want to ask you a question. When you were looking at the scores that night in November 2016, you saw that a team that you said on your star of the night that you didn't have on your radar at all, they put up 114 points at BYU. What was your reaction when you saw that score?
That this has to be as big a moment in the history of this school's athletic department as any. I was not intimately familiar with Utah Valley University, and I was looking to do a star of the night other than just my star of the night's LeBron James. He scored 48 points. You could do that any night. So I wanted to be a little bit more outside the box, and this is before I'd ever done anything with the mid-major minute or anything like that. And I came across this score, and I was blown away, but like you said, by the point total, and B, the fact that UVU had beaten BYU. And I'm just thinking that's got to be as big as it gets out there, because BYU and Utah are the big boys. And so I dug in a little bit more, obviously, and found out about the school and the team, and thus has spawned an awesome friendship.
That's awesome. Have you had much interaction with the fans? What's that been like to kind of, rustle up a new fan group when you gave us that shout out?
Like a big time, man. It was it really was the inspiration for the mid-major minute, which it was let's do something. Hey, by the way, they play basketball outside of Lexington, Kentucky, and Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So it was almost exclusively. It almost exclusively derived out of the feedback that I got from UVU fans. Like, wow, people responded to this. What if I did this? And by the way, there are varying degrees of response from other fans. I will always tell you that Utah Valley is number one in my hearts, and it was one of, if not the best response. There have been others that have been very good. Some, it's like you didn't even do anything. But that night is super special to me. I really do mean that.
Well, let's take a look real quick at the clip that we're talking about, because I think it shocked a lot of people when it pulled up on SportsCenter.
We've been waiting a while to give it to you. 3 stars of the night brought to you by Gillette Pro Shield. Your boy KC is going off the radar tonight to bring you a story brewing just below the mountains in Orem, Utah. It's a story of discovery, as in I just discovered they were a D1 Hoops program. And an incredible story about a group coming together against the odds. Utah Valley University beat BYU today, 114-101. Wolverines banged home 18 threes. They scored the most points by an opponent ever in BYU's home gym and beat the Cougars for the first time in school history. By the way, BYU won last year's game by 31. Utah Valley has 13 new players on its roster and a new coach, former BYU assistant and NBA journeyman Mark Pope. All this just 3 nights after the Wolverines rallied from 27 down against Denver to complete one of the biggest comebacks in D1 history and the biggest in program history. I don't know about you, but I'm jumping on the bandwagon while there's still room. The Utah Valley Wolverines. My star of the night. Butchie's star and America's star when SportsCenter continues.
Micah has a question, that we've been asking a little bit about mid-majors and kind of your affinity to them after seeing that clip.
We've been kicking around the Kevin Connors name for a long time, a little over a decade, especially at ESPN. You seem to have such an affinity for mid-majors and kind of promoting these stories and these schools that maybe get a little bit less love, but nevertheless, they play basketball as well, or they play all these other sports. Kind of where did your affinity for mid-majors come from?
I want to point out, guys, that you're not the only ones that have been kicking me around for about 10 years. I can feel it. Well, it came, what? Look, I played Division III college basketball at Ithaca College. I knew I wanted to study television and radio and play basketball, and I knew that I couldn't do it as a kid from Long Island. I knew I couldn't do it at a place like Syracuse, which is such a great powerhouse for both television, radio, obviously, and certainly basketball. So I went the Division III route. I have no regrets. Basketball, my 4 years there was a very tough experience, but it was also a very valuable experience to me. And studying television, radio was an amazing experience for me. So it's again, it goes back to, yes, we highlight Kentucky, North Carolina, Duke, et cetera, in highlights within SportsCenter. But again, there are a lot of other teams that play basketball outside of that. And by the way, come February and March, we find out about these teams quite often. So for me, it was recognizing that fact and that, the underdog may be an underdog, but that doesn't mean they can't compete. So really, it was born out of my Division III experience, plus my just overall love for the game of college basketball.
So, Kevin, who do you think would have won it all in college basketball this year? Would you have gone with, the mid-major Cinderella programs in Dayton with Obi Toppin, or would you have gone with like San Diego State and Malachi Flynn? Who was your favorite to win? Who do you think would have won the title had we had March Madness?
Very good question, Tyler. I was really high on Dayton because it wasn't just Obi. It was Jalen Crutcher. Anthony Grant is a big-time coach who just so happened to land at a school like Dayton after a couple of big-time opportunities. Wasn't as high on San Diego State, which isn't to disparage anything. They had an unbelievable year, and I'm not telling you that I don't think that they could have had a nice run in the tournament, but not to win it all. I was this is a little slightly off the radar. I was really, really high on Villanova. I think Jay Wright is as good a coach as there is in college basketball. And yes, I'm including everyone in that discussion. I think that you watch a Villanova game and you see a team that plays the game of basketball at a really high level. I mean, I'm not talking about that they're just effective and efficient. I mean, you can watch the sets that they run and see what they're doing. And they had a team of guys that most of them shot the three very well. Now, of course, that can win you or lose you games in the tournament. I really liked Colin Gillespie at the point guard. Sadiq Bey was obviously, he'll be an NBA player very soon. So I was very high on Villanova, but that was the most disappointing part about the season is that it could have been any number of teams. And I've described it this way before, guys. It's like having read a riveting book, 25 chapters worth, and the last chapter's been ripped out and we're never going to know how the book ends.
Love that analogy.
We're so glad that you didn't mention one other team that a lot of people were high on, especially considering, what this podcast is all about. So we're glad you didn't mention that, although, that staff over there did take UVU to new heights and so forth. So I'm glad you didn't mention that one team.
I think I know who you mean, and I just have to say, Coach Pope has been nothing but unbelievable to me, and I think that as tough as the divorce might have been for Utah Valley fans, I hope there's a recognition of what he meant to the school and what he meant to that program. And he's always going to be a number one in my book because he has been amazing to me, and I'm super happy for the success that he's had. But I understand where you're coming from too, Kyle. I promise.
It's all good. We're good. Switching gears a little bit, you kind of mentioned that you went to school to play basketball, but also to, kind of get into broadcasting. Was that always your dream, or did that start as you played more sports growing up and so forth?
Yeah, I guess it would sort of be where, when are you asking did the dream begin? I mean, I won't tell you that I was 8 and saying this is what I want to do, which is the case for some people. I know some people that say, from a very early age, that's exactly what they've wanted to do. For me, it was, well, of course I'm going to go to the NBA. And then you kind of get to the realization of, I'm not terribly athletic, and I'm not able to compete on that level. So it was probably early in high school where I said, wait a minute, what if I could talk about sports for a living? And wait a minute, what if I could broadcast the games, and then I could travel with the team and see games every night and get paid for this too. And so that was sort of where it all kind of began. I can remember calling Tecmo Bowl football games in my buddy's basement. Nice. And we were calling them like it was we were Pat Summerall and John Madden, calling games on CBS back in the day. We took it very seriously. And so that's kind of where the love the love affair with the idea came about. And then I got to do some things in my high school with the morning announcements and some stuff with the TV station. So it all sort of snowballed from there.
But you always wanted to be around sports, basically, somehow.
Oh, big time. I mean, ask my poor mom, who had 3 boys, and we grew up in an apartment on Long Island. So, I mean, if we weren't running around our room playing Nerf basketball or tackling each other in the living room, sports were on TV. So it's always been a huge part of my life.
Nice. So
what advice?
Sorry,
Kyle.
Go ahead, Ty.
Kind of a question related to that. What advice do you have for people who are wanting to get into sports broadcasting, who are wanting to be, calling these games?
To have a setup like you have behind you right now, Tyler. And I'm not saying that tongue in cheek, man. I mean, you got to be passionate about it. Don't be someone who wants to get into this because you want to be famous. You've got to have a strong passion for it. You've got to know that you're going to have to work very, very hard, that sports are not a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 gig, that you'll work on holidays, you'll work when buddies are getting married. I can't tell you how many weddings, parties, holidays that I've missed out on. And so that's one component of it. The other component of it is that, I've lived the life professionally that I've wanted to lead for a large degree. So I would say you've got to be passionate about it. You've got to love it. You've got to want to work hard. You've got to be coachable. You've got to get along with other people. You've got to be a good writer. You better be a good listener, an interviewer. A lot of nuts and bolts stuff that's not, I don't know if it's germane to the question that you asked, but you've got to want to live it and breathe it, because I really, really believe the people who don't you can sniff them out pretty easily.
And you probably have to have a spouse that kind of allows you that flexibility too, correct?
That is such a great point. And you hit the nail right on the head, Kyle. I mean, what's funny is I met my wife after I got to ESPN. So, I spent so many years where I was where my career was my spouse, and I dropped everything to take opportunities. I worked at a tiny little station for 7.5 years, and I could not get another job. I mean, I could not get arrested. I sent out VHS tape after VHS tape, and forget getting an offer, I didn't get an interview. And then I finally got a break. You guys might know the name Kevin Burkhardt. He was working at WCBS Radio in New York. He left to take the field reporter job for the Mets. And so I took over an afternoon drive updates on WCBS 880 Radio in New York. And that sort of helped my career take off. But and by the way, that year I was doing radio, and then all of a sudden TV updates came along, and I was working literally 7 days a week for about a year. I mean, I'm talking I had about 6 or 7 days off the entire year. But I loved it, and I could. And I can't do that now. I would not be able to do that now with a wife and 2 kids, as flexible as my wife allows me to be. So you're 100% right. You've got to have someone that's going to help you buy in.
Back to your playing days, or, you know, maybe even the dream of playing, what would be your walk-up song / pre-tip-off song that you would expect to play that might, you know, get the blood pumping, get the heart, you know, racing?
Boy, that's a good question. I would probably say I would rather that it be something that my coach would want to hear, considering he didn't put me in the game all too often. So I'd want something that would be motivating him. You know, it's such a great point that it's funny that you even bring that up, because I'm preparing to do some radio this weekend, and I would one point that I wanted to make with us inevitably talking about the Jordan documentary was how great the music has been. Like when I was growing up, that's all I listened to was old school hip hop. You know, in the 1980s, rap was and what they're playing, LL Cool J, Eric B. and Rakim, Big Daddy Kane. That was all I listened to back then. Now I've kind of changed my taste a little bit, although I still, if I listen to rap, it's that stuff.
Sure.
So it would have been something like that.
So, kind of along the subject of songs, which school do you think has the best fight song in the nation?
Oh boy, that is such a tough one. I mean, look, my name is Kevin O'Neill Connors. I'm 100% Irish, so I probably would lose my card if I didn't say Notre Dame on some level. You know, the Michigan's fight song is amazing. I'm a big Syracuse fan and Army fan, so, and you know, both of them have amazing. You can't go wrong for the most part with college fight songs, and that, you know, one of the hats I wear at ESPN is a college football host. You know, on Saturdays in college football season in studio, and it's the beauty of college football.
Yeah.
I know that we get it in college basketball, and I don't mean to diminish fight songs in college basketball, but you really, really get them in college football. It's such a part of the environment. So, you know, I've given you a couple. You know, UCLA's got a great fight song. You almost can't go wrong.
I have to admit, that's why I like playing NCAA football on my Xbox 360 over playing Madden, because of the fight song being played when I score a touchdown. And that's the best part of the game. Like you said.
Kyle, have you guys bugged my phone? Because this is another question that is incredible. So on the side, I do voiceover work for EA Sports. In fact, I got a little setup going on here in the background. I don't know if you guys can see it here. We got a little setup over there. I'll be doing VO stuff here, because normally I go down to Orlando. And I have a conversation with one of the guys down there, and we talked about it today. The EA Sports college football game is the best game they ever made. But obviously with the name, image, and likeness stuff that's been on the shelf, I'm hoping, we're all hoping. And we had a conversation about this today, me and my guy. We're really hoping that it comes back in some form, because you're right, it is the best game.
Yep, sure.
We need it. So, kind of back to more of you, Kevin. Your ESPN colleague, Steve Levy, had a very infamous slip-up on national TV, and I think it was 1996, the bulging disc incident. Folks, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go YouTube it. But have you ever had an embarrassing moment like that on live TV or on live radio?
No, not to that degree. I've had here's the best story that I can give you guys. So 7.5 years, I'm at this job that I first started at, right? And again, it's a tiny little station. It's a first job. Can't get arrested, sending out tapes. No one's getting back to me, et cetera, et cetera. Finally get the radio gig. I'm doing radio for a couple of months. The news director at the TV station, again, in WCBS in New York City. So now market 1. Keep in mind, I was working in like market 7 million, and I couldn't get a job, couldn't hear back from anybody. Now the news director in market 1 in New York City says to me, would you want to audition and do weekend mornings for us? I mean, what do you think? So I go ahead and do it, get the gig. My first morning on the air in New York City, we have a mic pack that you clip onto the back of your belt, and then the wire comes up and you clip it on here. So the clip falls off. So the mic just so as I'm doing, the highlight of the Mets game, whatever, I'm configuring to get this so that it doesn't fall off the back of the chair. So I wind up putting it here, in front of in my lap, right? So now the highlight's over and I come back on camera. So I'm back on camera and I say, meantime, the Yankees game, and then as I'm saying this, the mic slips and falls on the ground, right? So I've got my co-anchor, the news anchor there. Again, this is day 1 for me. I don't even know her, but she's beautiful. And she says, I'm going to take this opportunity to screw with this guy. So my mic pack is on the floor. She gets down underneath the desk on the floor, and she's sitting in between my legs looking up on me. Now, keep in mind, no one on TV can see what's going on. But I'm on the air on day 1 in New York City, and there is my co-anchor sitting between my legs, handing me my mic pack. That's not a bulging disc story, if you will, but it probably is the craziest things I've ever gotten.
It's your hazing story from the big job. That's funny.
Love that.
I'm sure the Mike is dying to ask a question. He hasn't asked one in a few minutes. Take it away, Micah.
Yeah. Sorry, we all have a lot of questions for you. That's a really awesome story. First day. We've all been kind of kicking around. You're kind of a self-entitled people's champ. Where did that come from?
It was like from seeing other people post funny things in their bio, and I was like, this is the best I got. So I hope it's funny. I hope one or two people have laughed at it. I hope on some level I'm representative of the people, but is there any actual accreditation? No, there's not.
It's a pretty solid self-accreditation. I think we'll take it.
I appreciate that, Micah.
So another question, you work on Sportscenter, you do it on a nightly basis. What's it like going on, right before you get on TV? Do you ever kind of think to yourself, I'm going live in front of thousands of people? Is that nerve-wracking? If you do have those nerves, how do you deal with them? Stuff like that.
Tyler, some nights it would be millions. So if I allow myself to think about that, I probably would get nervous. To be totally honest with you, it's a really good question. When, I've done this now for 20-something years professionally, so I like to think that there aren't too many situations that I haven't encountered in TV. From bizarre stories to breaking news stories to you name it. I think every time you say this, of course, something else comes up, but I've had a lot of things come my way. It's never nervous. It's kind of a nervous energy. And I like to feel like if that ever goes away, that might be time to think about doing something else. It's like, you know how to drive a car, but I would imagine that it's sort of like if you ever had to drive a car in a race. You're not nervous, you know what you're doing, but there's a good nervous energy. And again, we're in studio, it's like it's me and my co-anchor, and then there's like 4 other people in studio. I get more nervous when I've got to give a speech in front of a couple hundred people. And even then it's not, nerves, but it's more nervous, I guess, than being on TV. But again, that's a product of so many years of doing it. It's a product of being a grizzled old veteran like myself.
He's got the experience.
Exactly.
Hey, so I have to ask you about back where you're doing your voiceover. You're obviously a Bills fan. How often do you watch the Four Falls of Buffalo, the 30 for 30 on ESPN?
Zero, zilch, never seen it. Don't want to. I am as tough a sore loser as it comes to watch. Like, I will never watch if those games are on at all. Won't watch them. No thanks. Syracuse losing in the '87 national championship game, can't do it. No interest. That's just how, you know what? I mean, but I'll watch the '03 championship game, whenever I can. I've got the DVD of it. It's too hard because that's the kind of fan that I am. And I'm not being dramatic with you guys. I'm being serious. I haven't seen it. I have no interest in watching. I have no interest in reliving that. That's the second toughest night of my life as a sports fan is the Giants Super Bowl. And then of course they only got worse after that. So I have not watched it once, Kyle, and I don't intend to watch it.
So I feel your pain because I'm a Cubs fan. So, I mean, we get to, what was it? Was that 2003 with the Bartman situation? And, then all the NLCS is right up before, 2016. And it just, I feel your pain. So I get it. That's why I go back in YouTube the 2016 playoff run, and I can say I'm a happy camper because they won one in my lifetime.
And by the way, I'll say this: those Bills teams were among my favorites in all of my years of being a fan. I mean, Jim Kelly, Bruce Smith, Andre Reed, Thurman Thomas, and I could keep on going down the list. Marv Levy. I got a chance to work with at ESPN Bill Polia, the general manager of those teams, and would talk with him about those teams more than he probably cared to. I still have a Jim Kelly jersey, which someone might say, "Oh, that's a cool throwback." Well, no, actually, I had it. I bought it when he was still playing, so I just still have it.
Yeah.
I love those teams so much that the pain of and what stinks about it the most is that they never won. I mean, that team to me, I know that there are a lot of fans who say their team that never won a Super Bowl was the best to never win, but those Bills teams were so good, and to never win and come so close so many times, it was hard.
I think we can relate a little bit as UVU fans. We're, to some degree, we've kind of been robbed in our minds of something, and for us that's the big dance, right? It's this idea that we can make that tourney run, that we can get in there, we can be part of it, and we feel like we've been robbed of that. You've been kind of involved with UVU for the last 4 years. You've seen obviously Mark Pope. I think we all think he's a great man, amazing coach, has done a lot for our program. Chris Burgess, you could name all of them, right? And all the players, and we pay homage to that. But seeing somebody like Mad Dog Madsen come in, and and all of these amazing coaches and players starting to kind of flock and buy into this system. Do you have any thoughts or maybe predictions or moving forward for this program? We'd love to just kind of get your thoughts on what do you expect from UVU men's basketball moving forward.
I had a chance to host Coach Madsen and a few other friends from UVU at ESPN. It was around this time a year ago. It may have even been really right around this time a year ago. And I swear to God, I don't know that I've ever been around a more down-to-earth, nice man than Coach Madsen. It was almost like, is this an act? And obviously it's not. He's that genuine. He's that. And then I've subsequently, maybe you guys have seen it, Shaq did a sit down with, I think I don't want to say, I think was it Christine Leahy? Did you guys see?
Los
He did an
Angeles, yeah.
interview. Yeah. And he was talking about Mad Dog and like how he was the most pure, genuine guy he's ever been around. And so the reason I bring all that up is, yeah, guess what? I think that there are kids who are going to say, that's what I want. I don't want some snake oil salesman to be my head coach. I want someone who's the real deal, who, oh, by the way, played in the Pac-12 and was inducted into the Stanford Hall of Fame. And, oh, by the way, played in the NBA for double-digit years. So he's got the pedigree, and he's the authentic, genuine article. So, look, can I tell you that he's going to absolutely get it done? I can't. Do I think that he is a great coach for UVU? There's no question. By the way, I think the conference is good. I worked all season long with Bryce Drew. And, listen, Bryce didn't go to Grand Canyon to lose. I mean, I guarantee you they're committing to him, and they're going to be a tough team down the road. But I guarantee you this. You guys will be rooting maybe a little bit harder than I will, but next to you guys, no one's going to be rooting harder for the Wolverines to get into the tournament than I am.
Did you see the news that came out today that the athletic director, Jared Sumsion, tweeted out that on December 1st, Utah Valley is traveling to Austin to take on the Longhorns?
Yes, I did see that. That's all. And again, look, when I talked with them, and we were, and I take zero credit for any of this, but, look, they were sort of saying, how do we go about continuing to raise the profile of the school? What Coach Pope did with the toughest 24 hours, I mean, that's how you do it. Look, here's the totally honest answer, guys. There's 360 Division I schools, which means on any given night, there's upwards of 100 games going on. ESPN can't air highlights of 100 games. But I can tell you this much. When Utah Valley plays Kentucky and North Carolina on consecutive nights, that's a story. That's something where I flat out pitched that to our producers, and they were like, whoa, okay, we got to show this. So going to play Texas, and guess what? Shocking Texas and Austin. That's a way to get on SportsCenter. And those are just, by the way, cool games for fans to get excited about and good gauges to see where your team is at. So that's a complete home run by Jared and his staff, and obviously Coach Madsen and his staff.
Do you think one last question about the schedule here? Well, actually, two questions. The first one is the fact that you think that performing well, like they did at Kentucky both times, a couple years ago and then this last year, that gets people talking, even if they had the struggle that they had. I mean, a first-year head coach to go into Kentucky, and they nearly beat the Wildcats this year. Does that say a lot about him as a coach and helping to put, the team on the map, in your opinion?
I mean, it's instant validation, Kyle. It's, we were leading at the half the previous year, right? I mean, we were beating Kentucky at the half in Rupp Arena. If that doesn't get your attention as someone who knows anything about college basketball, what will? There's no question. And these to me are win-win scenarios for the mid-majors. They just are. And by the way, it's why a lot of the big dogs don't want to play the mid-majors. They'd rather, the big dogs would all rather play each other and not have to give any life to the mid-majors, because if they win, they're supposed to, and if they lose, oh no, Kentucky just lost to fill in the blank. And they would rather be the schools that in the end steal up all the at-large bids in the NCAA tournament and keep the pie to themselves. So to me, the fact that UVU is getting these games is a great thing. Coach Madsen and just his relationships, and obviously Jared and the job that he does, we're going to get these games moving forward. But there's no question. It's when you play well in those moments, how can it be anything other than validation?
So how do you feel about in-state games being played? Utah Valley has, what do we say, guys? Do we say 4 in-state games plus the 2 against Dixie because they're in the WAC this year, right? The only one they're not playing is Utah State. How do you feel about in-state games being played? I mean, especially being from New York and knowing how many universities there are there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me ask you this, Kyle. What do you get more juiced up for? Utah Valley versus BYU or Utah Valley versus Montana State?
Utah Valley versus BYU, obviously, yeah.
BYU.
There's no question. I mean, and it's why so often you wonder why, whether it's traditional relationships over the traditional rivalries that aren't renewed, you know, in you pick the sport, you pick the school, you know, as a diehard Syracuse fan who, you know, Syracuse's biggest rival forever was Georgetown. And then for a little while, they didn't play Georgetown. It's like, what the hell are you doing? That's a win-win for everybody. Why on earth would you not have Georgetown and UConn on the schedule if you're a Syracuse fan? So, you know, I get that there's a little bit of a ticklish spot right now with Coach Pope being at BYU and having so many friendships and allegiances to UVU. If that game doesn't happen, that's one I get, but why not? Hey, you know what? Make it look at what the Philly schools do. They play that Philly 5 thing every year, and like that's like a mini conference championship in and of itself for those schools. So especially in a state like Utah, where you could make it UVU, BYU, Utah State. How cool would that be? Who in the state wouldn't be excited about that?
That's the only sad part. Utah State doesn't want to have Utah Valley on their schedule. It's like they don't want their 13-game win streak over the Wolverines snapped or something. I don't know. So I'm going to let Micah take you out on this last question.
We really only have one last question. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule. We know it's late there. You've got a new child, and it's been awesome to have you on. Can we ever expect to have Kevin Connors sitting in one of those yellow seats in the UCCU Center in Orem, Utah in the future?
I tell you, here's what I can tell you. I've had the conversations with Jared and with Coach Madsen. I've had the conversations with my wife. I swear to you, at some point, I'm going to move heaven and earth to make it happen this year. I would love nothing more. I can't tell you how, my older brother has become a huge UVU fan because he thinks it's such a neat story that he's gotten on board. I will do whatever I can to make it out there. The complicated thing, and we were even looking at games this year, it's complicated because obviously on Saturdays with college football, I'm in studio all day. And then my, college basketball is probably my biggest season where I work the most. So it's going to require finding a 3-day window where I could come out, spend the night, see a game the next day, and then head back. But you have my word. I'm going to do everything within my power to make it out because, man, I'd love to see the school. I have, you know what? Hang on a minute. 1 second.
You heard it here first. Kevin Connors is coming out. Move heaven and earth, I think, is the term he used. So I take that as a good guarantee.
Hang on a minute.
You know what?
Here we go. Oh, here we go. For a good year of her life, I read my daughter
Yes.
this book.
Oh, Willie.
And I can't tell you how many times I've told her, one day we're going to make it out to the UCCU Center.
Nice.
So with all the Utah Valley gear that I have and the books that we read, at some point, the Connors family is going to make it out there, I promise.
Nice.
We cannot wait.
Oh, yeah.
Same
Any
here.
last questions, Ty?
I can tell you this much. I know some people in the athletic marketing department. So when you do come out, I think it'd be pretty cool if we got the People's Champ t-shirts passed out to everybody for when you do come. I can make that happen.
Well, listen, if you guys are willing to do that, the least I could do is get my butt on a plane once it's safe to fly again and make it out. But
you know that
I really
BYU comes to Orem next year. 2021 is when BYU comes and plays at the UCCU Center. So just throwing it out there. I didn't want to like spoil anything, but they got that 3-game series they agreed to, where they're at BYU this year, in Orem next year, and then BYU the year after. So November.
See, Kyle, that you know what
might work.
I'm you know what, I'm gonna have to sew my BYU swag with my Utah Valley swag together. I love Coach Pope too much. Maybe I better not come for that game.
That's pulling the heartstrings right there. That's pulling right at the heart.
Well,
but guys, I want to say this sincerely. Thank you to you guys and to all UVU fans. I mean this sincerely. The relationship that we've built on social media and, you know, in calls like this, interactions has meant a lot to me. It really has. So thank you to you guys for all of your support.
Well, Kevin, we appreciate you joining us tonight on the Green Machine podcast. I mean, it's great to talk to you, you know, face to face instead of through a tweet or through something else. And you know, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm speaking for all three of us when we just say we love the fact that you recognized UVU that night back in November 2016, and you know the fact that you've repeatedly recognized them for what they've done, from scheduling the toughest 24 to having Coach Madsen and Jared and Jason out, you know, last year to kind of talk with them. I mean, it's a great thing for Wolverine Nation to continue to get seen and get noticed by people that, you know, it's kind of unexpected where it comes from. And like I said, for Micah and Tyler and myself, we appreciate you being on with us tonight and talking about, you know, your support for UVU, and also sharing kind of how you got to Sportscenter and some interesting stories about co-anchors being sitting between your legs. And, you know, we really appreciate it, actually. So.
Well, guys, the pleasure was mine. It really was neat talking with you, and you know, let's do it again. Let's do it again, maybe at the start of next college hoop season, and I'll be honored to be on again with you.
Sure. Well, everybody, Tyler, we'll get you your signature sound off. That's Kevin Connors. You can follow him on Twitter at KevConnorsESPN. Follow us on Twitter at OneTeamAllGreen. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to Instagram and follow us at OneTeamAllGreen. Tyler, give us your signature sound off.
Go Wolverines, baby. Woo!
Your boy KC is going off the radar tonight to bring you a story brewing just below the mountains in Orem, Utah. It's a story of discovery, as in, I just discovered they were a D1 hoops program. And an incredible story about a group coming together against the odds. Utah Valley University beat BYU today, 114-101.